Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast, where we believe coaching solves everything.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the I Love Coaching podcast. I am your host, Adam Roach, and today I have a very special guest with us all the way from the UK. We're not talking about the country. We're talking about UK as in, well, not University of Kentucky, but Lexington, Kentucky. We have Taylor Davis. Now, I'm going to read something here that my team, Taylor, has put together, and I'm going to fly right through this. They said, an author whose work has captivated and inspired readers across the nation, Taylor's latest book, Parable for the Republic, is a profound exploration of human spirit, governance, and the enduring power of faith. Taylor brings a unique perspective to his writing, blending rich storytelling with deep philosophical and religious insights. His ability to weave together complex characters, symbolic narratives, and poignant social commentary makes this work not only engaging, but also thought-provoking. In Parable for the Republic, Taylor challenges us to reflect on our values, our faith, and the principles that guide our society. His narrative compels readers to consider the foundations of true leadership, the importance of unity, and the role of faith in shaping our destinies.
Wow.
Dude, did they crush
that was
it?
Powerful.
well, they just did that from reading your book. So welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into the book. Do you want to?
Yes, sir.
Give our listeners here just a quick little background on you. How did you get to where you are right now, and where did the book come from?
So I was a young business owner who struggled. And I had if you've ever read the 5 a.m. Club, you know, this guru finds these people who are struggling, and he doesn't fix them, but he helps them uncover how to fix themselves.
Right.
And I wrote Parable for the Republic because I was a broken business owner who was frustrated, who wasn't doing what he knew he was called to do or performing at the level he knew he was called to perform at. And this guru finds me. And I don't believe that happens by accident. I believe that God places people in our lives and allows them to work through us. And so Parable for the Republic happened because I had this amazing business transformation where we grew by 770% in 1 year.
Wow.
770%, not because I changed anything strategically with the business, but because I started fixing myself. And what I realized was I was burying my talents due to fear and anxiety. I tell the story in the book about I'm sitting there with this business titan. You know, he's like 70 years old. I'm sitting in his office, and he's got all these awards around and everything. And we start having this conversation about, he says, you know, I see something special in you. It's like the alchemist. And I see something special in you, but when you possess something special, seldom are you believe. He goes, right now, I believe it, but the world doesn't believe it because there's something holding you back. And for the first time in my life, I had to explain to him the things I was struggling with as not a business owner, but a person. And so he taught me how to multiply my talents instead of burying them. We go on this amazing, business run transformation. It's going amazing. And I started thinking other people need to hear this. And I remember reading the parable of talents as Jesus taught the disciples and the consequences of being a talent barrier, which is being cast into the dark. And I was on a path, like I think a lot of people are, being cast in the darkness societally because they're bearing their talent. And I also thought that was a great analogy for our country, because we sit around wondering, why do we feel like our culture or our country is being taken from us, it's being eroded? Because far too many people are bearing their talent to influence the culture. So the more you bury it, the more it will be taken away. And it will be given to somebody else or something else, some other influence that will multiply it, whether it be for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. And so our son Harrison was 4 months old, and I just thought, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to not bury this talent. God's blessed me with this idea. And our pastor, Ron Edmondson at Emmanuel Baptist Church, he had just preached about the parable of talents. And I thought, this is the amount of material I have here. I could really use my talent to share these ideas with the world. And so I kind of told the story in multiple parts of one, how I use the parable of talents to grow. how America can use the parable of talents to grow, and how anybody of any leader of any kind can use the parable of talents to grow. And so I named it Parable for the Republic. Our son was 4 months old. He would go to bed every night at like 7 p.m. And then from like 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., I would just write. And I did that for 2 weeks. And the first publisher I met with, they said, hey, we like the concept. It's, we like it, but we want you to take some of the stuff out of it. There's some offensive stuff in here. I said, well, I didn't think anything. I didn't curse in the book. Like, what's offensive about that? They said, well, there's some language in there about, people who live a lukewarm life. They just, they live like this. It's just lukewarm. And I said, well, you're a Christian publisher, right? And they go, yeah. And I go, well, that whole part of the book is from Revelation.
Right.
Where Jesus says, he will spit the lukewarm church out of his mouth. And I'm making the argument that most people live a lukewarm life where they're not out there expanding and meeting people and impacting people. They're just kind of shut in, and they're retaining their talent, which means it's going to be taken from them. And so they said, listen, we'll do a deal with you, but we want to take this part out. And I said, okay, let me think about it. Let me pray about it. And I remember praying about it and thinking, I felt like God called me to write this book, but every night I would sit down and write. There's parts of the book that I don't remember writing, because every time I'd go to write, I would just pray, Holy Spirit, write through me, because I'm not smart enough. I'm not clever enough. Just write through me, because who I am isn't enough. And there's parts of the book that I don't really remember writing. There's somebody sent me a screenshot of something from the book and said, this was genius. That's so smart the way you explain that. I'm like, I don't even remember writing that, to be honest with you. And I remember praying about it, thinking maybe this is God's test to see if I will just publish something just to get it published, but not really say what he called me to say. That part of the book has been one of the most impactful parts of the book from other leaders who've reached out to me and said, I was living a lukewarm life. Yep. I felt so convicted by that part of the book. I'm now, doing these 3 different things to stop being lukewarm in my business or in my leadership or in my coaching or whatever it is. And so I wrote it. It got published. It sold out on Amazon on release day. And the rest is history. God's done amazing things with it from there.
That is incredible. I want to dive right into that lukewarm. I've got a ton of questions here, but I want to dive into the lukewarmness. I mean, none of our listeners are in lukewarm, so it's just you and I going to have this conversation together. Sure. They're all in the boiling hot water. They're doing great right now, right? No, we all know that we hide our talents. We hide our skills. We hide our God-given abilities here. And just from your own experience, so we'll just talking just to you. What do you think kept those talents in? In your own words, what kept them in? We coach coaches all over the country now, and then they go and coach their own clients. And I say there's 3 things, right? You have the fear of judgment, you have the fear of rejection, then you have the fear of success. So what do you feel was your fear of hiding these talents?
The fear for me was the fear of spectators. I feared being judged by spectators. And I feared the reaction that I would get publicly by growing my business. And this is honestly a more recent thing for me. I used to think that, I have Iron Guide coaching now, where I coach financial advisors who have all the talent in the world, but they're not growing. And I also coach other business owners, other industries, but the main focus is financial advisors because I know their work. And it hit me like crazy, where I was running, my business, and I'd have people reach out, and I just felt like I wasn't qualified to coach. Or if people found out that I, of all people, somebody who struggled before, was coaching, they think, well, he didn't walk in on day one. He can't teach people how to start off perfect. So how could he coach them? Right. And I let that like head trash get to me. And I'll tell you what happened, Adam. I was at an event where Ed Milet said, you are most qualified to help the person you used to be. You're most qualified to help the person you used to be. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have been burying my talent by not helping those people who are talented, but are bearing it and are struggling. And so that's when I really dove back into Iron Guide coaching, of going to advisors or the people who reach out to me and saying, yeah, I will help you. Because I realized that was, our advisory business. It fills our bank account, but it doesn't fill my spiritual bank account. It doesn't fill my heart the way seeing people change and evolve does in the business world. And so once I got through that fear of just spectators' opinions, I really just said, forget it, because I had a really good coach. I think coaches are important. I had a really good coach who said, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares if people say, oh, he thinks he can coach other people and help them? Who does he think he is? He said the same people said, you thought the same thing about writing a book. You thought people would say, he's 30. How can he write a book on faith? What has he really been through? The answer is a lot, but people don't know everybody's story.
Yeah.
So he reminded me, he said, well, who do you perform for? Do you perform for the crowd? Are you a circus performer who's performing for the crowd? No, you're a child of God who performs for an audience of one.
Mm.
Every day you bury your talent, the devil laughs at you.
Mm.
I'm a competitive person. So the fear of somebody laughing at me because I'm burying my talent makes me upset. It makes me angry with myself. And so I wrote in Parable for the Republic, the day you realize that every day you bury your talent, the devil laughs. If you're a competitive person, you won't bury it again and he won't be laughing anymore.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so stinking good. Everybody pause this podcast right now. Push rewind about 5 minutes and listen to that again, because whether it's your business, whether you're an adult, whether you're a kid, whether you're a senior citizen, we all need to hear that, because we do that every single day. If we're not the highest level of consciousness, I believe, right? If we're not truly in tune with our thoughts, well, we can get buried every day, and that devil can come up and say, "Gotcha again today. I won."
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. If you are not self-aware enough, the most successful, the most impactful, the most influential people I know are world-class masters of their thoughts. They know how to take a thought that they're fed that's negative and say, no, that's negative, cast it aside and move on. It's the people who I talk a lot about, the people I coach being the thermostat or the thermometer.
Mm.
When I walk in a room, when I walk in a team meeting, when I walk into somewhere I'm giving a speech, or I show up on television as a political commentator, every time before I go in, I always pray about it, and I always remind myself, be the thermostat, not the thermometer.
Yeah.
If you're the thermometer in your family, you just kind of report the temperature in the room. You need to be the one who walks in your business, your family, your church, whatever it is, and you walk in and you set the thermostat to the temperature it needs to be at.
So good. So stinking good. I want to go into this part right here. You said forgiveness is the cornerstone of our faith and the path to redemption, right? Just yesterday, Dana and I were at church at Seacoast here in Charleston, in Mount Pleasant. And it was all about forgiveness, right? And we're in this season of God help me with, and then they fill in the blank with a word, right? And 2 weeks ago was marriage. And ironically, they said that the number 2 challenge that the church wanted the pastors to help them through, well, they would have thought financial, they would have thought many other things. And it came to number 1 was marriage. Number 2 was forgiveness. So when I read that forgiveness is the cornerstone of our faith and our path to redemption, tell me more about that in your own words, because it's so true. I mean, forgiveness is everything.
Yeah, I think every day I used to not be very good at this at all. I used to, I've always struggled with, I would harness and bury a lot of things rather than giving forgiveness freely. And I think that when you're not forgiving of other people, you basically carry around that poison with you. And I've been hurt, I've been betrayed, I've been lied about, I've had all those things happen, like all of us have, at levels I thought would never happen. I just thought, this person I was so close with, how could they do this to me? But carrying around that pain doesn't hurt them. It only slows you down, and being able to just let free of it and let it go allows you to propel forward. It's also in faith, the only way, and I made the argument in the book, I don't want anybody to take it as, the path to the path to salvation is multiplying talents.
Right.
Is what you do with your life and money and business, everything else. That's not the path. I had a very made a very targeted point that if we get to heaven's gates and they say, what's the password? The password isn't, look how many talents I've multiplied. The password is grace. I'm here by grace and forgiveness because I've been repentant. And I think that we as people have to remember that we get there by grace, not through works or anything like that. It's the same thing in life and business and marriage. Is forgiveness is something that it's you being able to let go of something so that you can move on. But if you harness it, you can never move on. It's like an anchor you're tied to.
Yeah, you know what's so neat about that too, and from my own experiences, when I've stepped into a space of forgiveness, it frees me up, but it frees me up to go into a more authentic state. And so we have here at the I Love Coaching community an acronym called REAL, and you're a real coach. Though to be a real coach, you have to step into the acronym, which is relevant, experiential, becomes a big one, authentic, and you have to be a leader, right? And a leader is an influencer, and an influencer is someone to get someone to take action. So the authenticness and the authenticity there, we take people through what we call our blueprint, and we actually help them release, right? We help them go into a forgiveness space. We help them go into whatever is holding them back, whatever shackles are shackled to them that isn't allowing them to step into their authentic nature. It takes a while too. It takes a long, it can take some people overnight, which usually isn't the case. And others, it can definitely take a good year plus to really dive into that space of, okay, I can forgive now.
I think there's nothing more captivating than when somebody is authentic.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to be authentic and write in a book that would be published that I struggled with anger and guilt because most people don't know me that way.
Mm.
Most people did not know me as somebody who struggled with anger because I got so good at bearing it and harnessing it and hiding it. The only real person who knew it was my wife, Alex. She knew I struggled with a lot of anger of what my grandfather went through when he had cancer. And the experience of writing that, though, there was hardly a night where I would write where I did not cry because I knew that I was having to be authentic and tell people the real story of what changed. Because a lot of people think, okay, if I'm going to be coached, somebody's going to coach me on business strategy.
Right.
That's like what floats to the top. It's the iceberg underneath that we really have to focus on to unleash that top, everything floating on the top. And when I was able to change my relationship with fear and anxiety and anger and be authentic with myself, that's why I felt it was important to put that in the book. And I remember the publisher saying, like, this is going to be big because you're doing something that most won't do when they write a book, which is be authentic, be real, be vulnerable, because other people are looking for that. And I find that in our coaching business and our advisory business, when I'm real with somebody and I can tell them, here's what I really think, here's what I really feel, here's where I think we may not be the best, but here's where I think we are the best. People go, okay, I don't have to fear this person anymore because they're being authentic. They're telling me the truth. They're not hiding something from me.
So good. So good. Yeah. We call that, when we're coaching coaches, we call that coaching to the person, not the problem. Right. And there's so much problem in a space of, let's just call it business, though it's the person that we're really coaching. That's what we're fixing right there. That's good. Right. I want to switch gears here and go into faith and governance. Right. I love the space that we're in right now. Let me rephrase that. The space we're in, the country that we're in right now, that this political environment that we're in right now is, what's the best way to describe it? Interesting. It's interesting though. I took this out of your book. A nation's true strength is anchored in its faith. A nation's true strength is anchored in its strength. So I wrote down, how does this belief influence the political landscape from the book? What do you think about that?
I think that a nation's true strength is anchored in its faith because it forms the ethos of the country. Yeah. It's like, where did the shining city on a hill come from? Well, that was a borrowed quote, but the founders and the pilgrims used it when they came to the country, that this country would be a shining city on a hill. And that was a thought based on faith, because Jesus said a city set upon a hill cannot be hidden. And when you build a country or you build a republic or you build a business or anything, and you want it to be the shining city on a hill, it has a little bit different ethos than we're going to build the most wealthy country ever. We're going to build the most powerful military ever. It's all built based on this core belief that it's built on faith of fairness and justice and equality and ambition. And when we lose that, like I feel like we've lost that.
Sure.
And
Agreed.
after the book, I was done writing it. I wish I had been able to go back and edit some. But Alex and I took a trip to Washington, and the book was done editing, but it hadn't been released yet. And I said, let's go to Washington one more time, and just go visit the White House, everything. And I never thought that I would feel this way about our country and the time that we're in right now, because I grew up in the era of George Bush was president, and America is righting the wrongs of the idealism that's negative in this world. We're fighting a nuclear power. America always comes and saves the day, and that's eroded over time. And when we went to Washington, I was outside the White House. We visited the White House, and we visited the Capitol. And I remember thinking outside the White House, we're still the shining city on a hill, but the lights are flickering.
Yes, big time.
The lights are flickering because we've lost that core ethos of what we were called to do, which was to be the shining city on a hill. And you can't be the shining city on a hill. Your cup can't run it over if it's being drained from within. And we're no longer talking as a nation about going to the moon or building the most effective economy possible. We're trying to find the policy and agenda that makes us the most comfortable. After everything it took to build this country, we're now getting complacent and we're burying our talent.
Yeah, it's good. You know what's really neat about that language there is you can take that shiny hill and you can take that example and you can say your family is a shiny hill, right? You can say your home is a shiny hill. You can say your business is, and you can take all those words that you just use and layer it on top of that. And now you, listener, get to go pay attention. Are the lights flickering at home? Are the lights flickering in the business? Are the lights flickering in your relationships, right? That's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I think part of that is having the self-awareness to realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you turn on any nightly television, depending on what network it is, somebody's going to say the lights are brighter than they've ever been. And you're going,
sure.
That's not true. And then you're going to have somebody else saying we're not. It's not that we're not shining anymore. We're not even on top of the hill.
Right.
And that's not true. When you have the self-awareness to think independently, you can say, we're just not what we once were, and we've got to get back to the core ethos of what put us there.
Yes.
And that's going to take freedom and sacrifice and thoughtfulness to make it happen.
Yeah, it's so good. It's interesting. So I listened to your podcast with Dana and Linda. For those that don't know, that's Everything Life and Real Estate with my wife and her partner. And man, you were dropping some bombs on there. That was so good. Though I want to take it to the next level here, and I want to talk about book number 2. You've never mentioned anything to me. You've never mentioned anything to Dana. When I text, I think I was driving somewhere, and I said, "Honey, that was an amazing podcast." And she said, "Yeah, I need him to run for president." I was like, oh, you never know. What comes next? What's next in your world as an author? What's next in the space of, maybe it hasn't been released yet, and maybe I'm opening up something here that could be fantastic, or you're going to tell me, Adam, that's enough. I'm not going to let any more secrets out. But what's next?
Yeah, I think I throughout my life I've tried to plan out, these 10-year plans and 5-year plans and everything else, and it never turns out exactly the way that you thought.
Sure.
Dana made the same comment to me about, we need you to run for this or that. And I've had other people, I've had people email me or text me or find me on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I heard this. I think you need to do this. I think you need to run for that." I don't know if that's what I'm called to do, but I've changed my thinking a lot to where, when the Bible says, that Christ will be a lamp unto our path, a lamp doesn't go very far. A lamp isn't a high beam that just shines up the whole mountain. It only gives you a few steps.
Right.
And so I think at this phase of my life, in this season of life, I'm just taking the next step and seeing where God leads me rather than trying to plot it myself based on my own wisdom or cleverness. And so book number 2, I don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
I've really, I've had a season of life that has been full of trials and tribulations and things that I've struggled with. I've leaned a lot on Psalms, which was a lot of David's writing. When he writes about being attacked, which that's par for the course when you write a faith-based book in a secular society. You're going to experience some of that. You're going to experience the DMs or the voicemails or the hate mail or the threats or whatever else by people who want you to bury that talent.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know if I'm called to run for office, if I'm called to be an author, an influencer. I don't know yet. I kind of have feelings that may be where it continues to lead. But I would say I think the people who are outwardly chasing those things are the ones who should least have.
Yes, agreed.
The person who says, I'm going to be president, I'm going to be governor, I'm going to be a congressman, I'm going to do this, and they're chasing those things. They're hungry for something that they should have. I think that the reluctant leaders are the best ones. They're the ones who people, they chased President Trump down for 30 years before he finally would run. He was very reluctant. And we look at some of our best leaders ever, and they've been people who are reluctant, because the reluctant leader, it doesn't mean they're a bad leader. It means that they don't have this self-aggrandizing belief that they can just fix everything.
Right.
And that it's just going to work out. They're people who are humble enough to question themselves. And I would say at this phase of life, I'm thinking maybe I could be called to do that. I could be called to run, but I'm going to let God make that clear to me, not me.
Yeah, that's a very wise answer for sure. Let's switch gears here just for a second. And we've got a few more minutes here. Let's go into parenting, right? So you write this amazing book. You're an incredible leader yourself, a very amazing entrepreneur. And you're learning and have learned how to release these talents now. And I think I heard you say you're in your 30s, right?
I've just turned 30. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Yep. So I think to myself all the time, I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. How can I help them expedite the learning process? I'm 47. How can I help them expedite the learning process so that at the age of 47, they are far beyond my learned skills at my age? What would you say to your kids as they're growing and knowing what you know now at 30, and as they grow into their 10s and their teens and then their 20s, what kind of path and thought process have you put into that?
Well, our son is 1.
Okay.
And
you got a good runway in front of you.
Yeah, we've got a pretty good runway. We want all the babies that God will give us. So we love being parents. I think for children, it doesn't apply to my 1-year-old, but when I think of our younger sibling, my sister, my sister-in-law, is to prepare them, to prepare them for the road ahead, not prepare the road for them, is a constant discussion of rewarding effort and dedication rather than result. I grew up in a sports background where the result is everything. And I had a coach one time who said, no, our goal is not to win the game. Our goal is to get a first down. And if we just stack up first downs, we can move the ball down field. And I think when it comes to parenting our son Harrison, Alex and I have kind of dedicated our focus being rewarding him for the effort. So right now, we're really focused on rewarding him for the effort of saying mama and dada and dog and everything else. He said thank you yesterday, which was really cute. But the same thing with his effort in crawling or walking or everything else. If he takes a step and falls, we don't go, oh, well, that was a big fail. We don't throw our hands up in the air and go, that was a big fail. It's a reward for him taking that effort of taking that step. And I think that's super important with the young people, is teaching them that the reward is in the journey and the process, not in the result. Because there's been a lot of, we hit this really big growth model that nobody at our age had ever had in our industry. And I remember thinking back and thinking, when they had us on stage for 16 seconds to, announce that we had done it, that didn't really feel amazing. Like the walk-up song was cool and the picture was cool. But when I thought back, the year before that was the best part. When we were in the thick of it and we were fighting, we're trying to get 1% better at this and that and tying things together, making something more efficient. That was the beauty of it. It was the journey and the process, not the result. So I feel like when parenting young people, whether it be in business or life or faith or all those together, is making them focus on the growth of the process, not the end result.
That's so good. Yeah, we had an example. My son and daughter, they both go to a tennis academy here locally. And my son, it was one of the most beautiful coaching moments I had seen in a long time outside of my father, who was an Olympic swim coach. And I just got to experience that my entire life. And the coach had set my son up for a match and said, win or lose, it doesn't matter. We're going to follow the game plan. And my son followed the game plan all the way up until it was 5-1, 40-15. He was winning. And then the other kids started coming back, and my son wound up losing the first set. So he did whatever he knew he could do to win the next set and then ultimately win the match. And I'll never forget, the coach calls us in to the yoga room, and he asks my son this question: what's distracting you? And he said, I don't understand the question. He said, no, I need to know what's distracting you. He says, I gave you every opportunity to follow the game plan, and you chose ego over progress. Because you wanted to win, and you can win, you're athletic enough to win, and that was a great win over someone you probably shouldn't have beaten, though you lost, because I can't help you now, right? You did not follow the game plan, and so therefore, if you're not going to follow the game plan, then progress doesn't matter to you, because you just impacted your 18-year-old self.
Yeah.
And it was such a beautiful, I said, Coach, I'm going to get you shirts made that says progress over ego.
Yeah. That's so good. And if I think about, just to build off that, my coach came to me one day and he said, who is the best in our industry? And I said, oh, this guy. And he goes, well, who are the top 5? And I said, these 5 people. And he goes, what would you have to do to play at their level? And I said, I'd have to multiply everything by like tenfold. And he goes, okay, how do you feel when you say that? And I said, I feel beaten. I feel like I can't do it. Like, that's, to grow that much would be impossible. And he goes, okay, so why do you spend this time focusing and worrying about something that you just agreed you can't do in 1 year, just mathematically? And I said, well, I don't know. It's just what I'm doing. He goes, right. It's because you're a default person. You're defaulting to your own thought pattern. So here's what we're going to do. For the next 5 years, we're going to base your success based on beating last year's version. That's all we're going to focus on. That's what you're chasing, is beating the last year's version of you so badly that you're embarrassed of last year's version of you. And within 2 years, we were in that upper echelon. When we quit focusing on the ego of being up there, high ranked, and all this sort of stuff, and just focused it on beating, forming that process of improving our history, not somebody else's history, things really started to grow, and it was amazing.
It's so good. It's such a great story. Well, let's do this, because we're right here on time. And I really appreciate it. This has been incredible. I can sit here and have another 3-hour conversation with you. I want to be respectful of your time. Tell us tell the listeners how they can find you in the coaching space, how they could get involved with you. What do they need to do? Where do they need to go?
They can find me on LinkedIn or on Facebook, J. Taylor Davis, and also on Instagram at JT Davis. So I'm on there. I get a lot of DMs and stuff like that from people, readers of the book, that sort of stuff. One thing that I decided whenever I published my book was I was not going to be the type of author who I had reached out to in the past, where I would DM them and say, this book impacted me in this way, this way, and this way. And I would just be left on red. And I would think like, I know I'm not some like celebrity who they want to communicate with, but if they truly did this for impact, I feel like they'd want to foster that a little bit.
Right.
And so something that I committed to whenever I published the book was I was going to make time for anybody and everybody. Anybody who reaches out to me, DMs me and says, hey, I read your book. It changed me in this way, or changed my faith, or changed my business, or changed my politics, or whatever, my involvement in whatever I'm doing. I always dedicate time to replying to those people. And I could use any excuse of, well, I'm running a company and I'm running a coaching business and I've got a 1-year-old at home and I've got a book, book events, and speeches, and podcasts, and everything else. I could have every excuse to say, well, I was just too busy to get to those people. But those people are the reason I wrote it.
That's right.
Those people are the reason that I wrote the entire book, was to see a kingdom impact for people who it would convict them what they knew in their hearts they were doing or not doing, and then go multiply their talent. So anybody who reaches out to me, DMs me, sometimes I'll get a DM from them. I'll just look them up online and just call them. I just want to talk to them. And so I think fostering those relationships is so important.
That's great. All right. So that's where they can go find you. That's where they can learn about you. And then clearly, I mean, you are a leader's leader, my friend. This has been such an impactful podcast, even for me sitting here just listening. I'm going to go back and listen to it again and take notes this time. So Taylor, thank you for being on the I Love Coaching podcast. I have no doubt our listeners today gathered a lot of great information. Go pick up his book, Parable of the Republic. It's sold. Well, if it's in stock, it sounds like it might be sold out again.
It's back in stock. It's back in stock.
Go pick it up and go get your copy and DM him and say thank you. DM him and have a conversation. That's what you should go do. So Taylor, thank you again for being on the I Love Coaching podcast. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
Absolutely. Thank you everybody for listening. If you like this podcast, go give us a subscribe, go give us a positive comment, and go follow Taylor. And by the way, don't forget, we have the I Love Coaching Summit coming up at the end of October, 24th and 25th. Go register right now. Go to ilovecoachingco.com and you'll see it on there. Thanks everybody. Take care. See you. Bye.